Good morning, good afternoon, and evening, baseball fans. Welcome back to the Barstool Baseball Show. This is Carl. It is Friday, and I am joined by Chris Castellani for another wonderful edition of Rockstar Wars. Today, we have the Chicago Cubs taking on the Houston Astros. Chris, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, man. This should be a good one. You know, the Roster Wars stuff has been doing really well. It's a lot of fun to do the head-to-head stuff, and I think especially in the second half of the season, now that rosters are set, we know what kind of teams we have. It's a fun thing to kind of go off of. And I was thinking about this just the other day, you know, for the Cubs being as good as they are, and for, you know, you being in Chicago and me being close to Chicago, I feel like we haven't talked about this team like that much on here. They've been in the top 9, I believe, before when we've done the power rankings, but you know, they're one of those teams that I think you all of a sudden you look at the standings in September, they're not just in the thick of things in the wild card race. I mean, they're pushing up on the Brewers right now. So I think it's a perfect time to take a team like the Cubs and see how they match up against what we'll be doing today, the defending world champion, and as of the time of this recording, pretty darn hot Houston Astros just beat the hell out of the Rangers.
Astros are red hot. Clemmer and I talked about it on the Wednesday MLB playoff show. Again, Monday, power rankings every week. Monday, power rankings. We're going to be doing our 24th or 25th show this upcoming Monday. Wednesday, we try to splice it up, make it different with headlines. This is Friday. This is a Rockstar Wars with me and Castellani. I want to say something quick about the Astros. For as much love the Mariners got for the month of October, the Astros are right behind them. Just right behind them. And for the Cubs, it's really a matter of if they earn the time on the show. And I've been relatively sensitive to coming in here and being a Cubs homer and just blowing Cubs content because this is a national show. And as I've learned from doing the show for 2 years now, there's just better value to talk about it objectively at a national level. However, now that the Cubs have warranted for a deeper dive, we're giving it to them. We did some Cubs Brewers a couple weeks ago. They're earning their stripes here in this. And I think this is a good exercise, as we've said repeatedly in a couple of last shows. These exercises for us as we get ready for the playoffs and really where are the strengths and the weaknesses of a team. And you and I can sit and bullshit about baseball for like 6 hours, unrestricted, nonstop. So I like the Rockstar Wars format. I like this because it kind of puts us in a box and makes us do some real specific thinking. So for those of you that are new to Rockstar Wars, what we've done is we've broken it out into 12 categories, starting with the starting pitching, catcher, third base, second base, third, shortstop, left, center, right field, bullpen, DH, manager. There's 12 groups, 1 point per group, except for starting pitchers, you get 2 points. And we start with the order of the position. So we're going to start with the starting pitchers because they're number 1 on the lineup card. And so let's just fucking get into it, man. It's Cubs versus Astros. We're talking starting pitching right now. We've got Justin Steele. Kyle Hendricks is the 1 and 2 for the Cubs with Jameson Taillon and Marcus Stroman. And then for the Astros, we have Framber Valdez, Justin Verlander at the top, and then Hunter Brown, and I'm including Christian Javier here.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair. I think, you know, this is a little bit closer than people might believe because Justin Steele is having a better year than anyone on the Houston Astros. I mean, we're well into September now. He is very much in the thick of things in the NL Cy Young race. I mean, he's just been fantastic. He commands the ball so well. I mean, great demeanor on the mound. But if we're talking depth in the rotation, once you get past Steele for the Cubs, and Hendricks has been better this year than he's been in several seasons, probably since the COVID year. But when you look at that the depth in the Astros roster there, especially when it comes to starting pitching, Verlander, Valdez as a 1-2. We saw what they were able to do in October last year. We saw what they were able to do in the regular season last year. You know, a little bit concerned about the 3 and 4 with Brown and Javier. There's inexperience there with Hunter Brown. Christian Javier has been more often than not bad in the over the last several months. But if we're just talking overall, not just resume, but overall depth, I think you've got to give the edge to Houston. Though I got to give a huge shout out to what Justin Steele has done for the Cubs. I mean, they aren't even. It's not quite Arrieta in 2015 levels, but you talk about a guy who has taken the team from here to here, given just based on the way that he's pitched. Justin Steele belongs in that category, but I'm still giving the overall advantage to Houston.
Yeah, I think it's way closer than people would think. But the stuff on the Astros starting staff is significantly better. Their stuff is significantly better. The pitchability for the Cubs, though, is through the roof. Justin Steele pitches at 92 to 94. Kyle Hendricks is obviously below 90 miles an hour. Marcus Stroman's not a fireballer. Jameson Taillon's not a fireballer. Jed Hoyer legitimately built this team without strikeouts in mind. And over 162, it's been very competitive. I think the starting pitching for the Cubs has adapted very well to the pitching changes, to no picks and the pitch clock. I think overall, though, if we were doing a 7-game series, I still like the way the Cubs started pitching matches up, but there's no fucking way I'm taking that over Justin Verlander and Framber Valdez. And when you look, Javier last year in the World Series was virtually unhittable. They have the pedigree, but overwhelming takeaways. This is much, much, much closer. And if they did square off, I do like what the Cubs bring to the table because it's so much different than having a group of guys that are throwing 95, 97, relying on splitters, stuff that can get flat in the playoffs, swing and miss guys. Like, you can really get blown up in the playoffs like that. But again, it's the Astros here. Any hesitation about this Astros rotation going into a playoff series, or would you still say this is a very good playoff rotation? Like, if this was a year ago and we said Hunter Brown, Christian Javier, Justin Verlander, Framber Valdez, I mean, these guys won a fucking World Series last year. Like,
right.
One year later, how much different do you feel about the core of the starting pitching?
That's my only downside, is that they simply aren't as good as they were last year. Like, Verlander was the man. Sub-2 ERA, had missed like 3-4 weeks of the season. Other than that, it was arguably his best year ever. And we're talking about a guy who's won the MVP. Frommer was incredible. Javier was just sensational, especially down the stretch. But it's like, I have noticed, and we talked about it last week with Verlander, just maybe a tick of a step back, you know. But I think that in many ways, that's kind of a victim of your own success type of thing, where we're so used to seeing what we saw from them in 2022, or when this rotation overall, the way it matches up in 2023, is still one of the best in baseball.
Well said, Chris. Let's get to catcher. Let's get to catcher here. We've got Maldonado versus Yan Gomes. And Maldonado, adept at handling a pitching staff. Yeah, they like throwing to him. He can't hit a fucking lick. People also like throwing to Yan Gomes, though. He's having one of his better seasons in recent memory, and he's really established himself in a day of platooning the catchers. If there was a 7-game series, Yan Gomes would go catch 7 games at this point.
Remarkably underrated player for me, Yan Gomes. And I chuckle at Maldonado because Maldonado, wonderful defensive catcher. I mean, he's done wonders for that pitching staff, but he is employed by Houston, and they keep re-signing him to 1-year deals year in and year out because they know what his value is, and he's aware of what his value is. If this was a team with an average lineup, they would not be throwing him out there. They couldn't. Houston can afford to do it because they know how good he is defensively, and you can put him 8th or 9th in the lineup, and every so often he'll run into a home run. Yan Gomes, to me, he's never been like in that upper tier with the Realmutos and the, at the time, Buster Posey when he was around, or Adley Rutschman, but he has been, one, a really good pitch frame and a really good defensive catcher for a while. I mean, you go back to those days in Cleveland, the amount of Cy Young caliber pitchers that he caught, I mean, it's pretty staggering, and I think that he had something to do with that. I mean, Kluber won both his Cy Youngs with Yan Gomes as his primary catcher. But the bat has always been stable enough. This is a guy who's caught playoff series. He's caught the final out of a World Series back in 2019 with the Nationals. He's bounced around. I feel like he gets very overlooked, but it seems like he's been comfortable there in Chicago. Especially by the time you get to October, what really matters is having really deep lineups. Is your number 9 hitter a guy that could put together a really solid at-bat? And I have way more faith that Yan Gomes will be capable of doing that than somebody like Maldonado, where you just know what you're going to have. So I'm going Gomes here.
Yeah, I think Gomes has earned it this year. Maybe at the start of the season, it would have been more of a coin flip, and we would be leaning into some of the subjective stuff with Maldonado more. But as it stands, Gomes is the better catcher. Gomes, interesting enough, very long career, much longer than you would think. Almost 20 wins above replacement accumulated. Now, 9 of those came within his first 2 full seasons, so credit to him for kind of stretching out this major league career. Also, too, and we'll get to this with manager, but I love a veteran catcher for David Ross. Miguel Amaya is a catching prospect for the Cubs that is athletic and explosive. He's not a Francisco Alvarez by any stretch of the imagination, but at one point he's a highly sought-after prospect. And I don't know if David Ross will ever let a very young catcher run with things. He needs a guy that he can stare in the eyes and talk to him about the game plan and not feel like he's coaching him up too much behind the dish. I think Gomes is really
it's like having a second manager. Yeah, it's like having a second manager on the roster. So yeah, it's a fair point. Yep.
First base. Now, first base, we're making an executive decision here. I said we were going to move Cody Bellinger. This is under the assumption that if the Cubs were playing a must-win game, what would be the lineup? If the Astros are playing a must-win game, what's the core bread and butter lineup here? For me, I think Cody Bellinger has to be considered first baseman for the Cubs right now. He's played himself into that position. They traded for Candelario, but I think Candelario would be playing third base in a must-win game. So we're considering Cody Bellinger as the first base for the Cubs. Any arguments to that?
No, and especially just talking about Candy for a second, I never liked Candy at first base. So no. I think that especially in that, I think it just diminishes his value. Not to say he's Arenado at third, but you're at least playing a premium defensive position. So yeah, I think if we're talking playoff scenario, and Bellinger's so versatile as a defender, you can put him anywhere, but as a first baseman, elite athleticism in that position. So yeah, I think definitely Belly at first.
Yeah, and then for the Astros, it's Jose Abreu, who, credit to him for as bad as he's been, he just continues to play every day. They run his ass out there. He's been atrocious going into the season. Again, this would have been a phenomenal argument, you know. And actually, it's kind of like reverse course, where Bellinger had fallen off so substantially, so questionably, where now Abreu is the one who's fallen off. So I think this is kind of cut and dry. I don't know if anybody can make a case for Jose Abreu here over Cody Bellinger. But if you wanted to try, could you go ahead and try? I'm going to shut it down, but go ahead and try.
No. I mean, the only thing you could say is that Abreu has been better since the first 2 months of the season where he was almost unplayable. You know, last night he had 7 RBI, right, against the Rangers. But Bellinger has been an absolute revelation. This is one of my favorite stories in baseball this year. It's not just that the numbers have seen a substantial uptick, because, I mean, he's like literally, in terms of value, 3 times as good as he's been the last 2 seasons combined. But there's an energy that he's playing with there right now that we haven't seen him play with since he won the MVP in 2019. It seems like everything about his game, personality-wise, is just rejuvenated right now. He's found a home in Chicago. I mean, he won't win the MVP. I mean, that's a 2-person race, but he'll get top 10 in terms of voting. I mean, he's been so valuable for that group this year. So this is a runaway one for Bellinger for sure. Yeah.
Now, Bellinger's bounced back so much that people are saying he's going to get $30 million a year and at least $200 million total. And now there's a lot of sentiment on the north side of Chicago that Cody Bellinger stay with the Cubs. However, the Cubs have the top center field prospect in baseball coming up, and one of the top center field prospects of the last decade coming up, who should by all means be the everyday center fielder for the next decade. This is a very difficult problem to solve. But Bellinger's been awesome. He plays well for the Cubs. He wants to be with the Cubs. He wants to be in that locker room. Would you pay him $30 million to play first base, though?
It's so tough to me because one really good bounce back year always worries me. It always makes me think that it's not, one good year is not indicative of a trend. I mean, how many players have made the All-Star team for one season that fell off? If I'm the Cubs, I do it. Yes, I would, because the market's there, the money's there. You are in the midst of what should be a pretty solid championship window that's opening up. You need a piece like Bellinger. But I think somebody else will dish out more than that is kind of the concerning part of this. But I think from the Cubs standpoint, yeah, I'd dish out the money for him. I think he's been the savior of your team this year. I
don't think he would take a discount, though, to stay with the Cubs. I think he would take the highest offer. He's a Boris client, coming off a rebound, had to take a 1-year deal after winning an MVP. There's a lot of things here that say he's going to cash a big check. So then the question comes back, will Jed Hoyer cut that check? That's going to be a great storyline this offseason. What are the Cubs doing for agency? Bellinger's played this into a wonderful narrative. Let's get to second base. And this is a much closer one than I think people realize, but it's gonna be hard to go with Nico here. But it's Nico Hoerner versus Jose Altuve. Nico Hoerner, first-round draft pick out of Stanford, came up as a shortstop. They moved him over to second base full-time when signing Dansby Swanson. Opposite that, one of the greatest second basemen of all time, Jose Altuve.
Yeah, well, this is where it gets tough. We had some instances like this last week with Dodgers Braves, where you are putting to the wayside, and to a certain extent, players who have had phenomenal years. I mean, I think that one thing that Jed Hoyer's done a really good job of is just adding players who, I mean, this sounds silly to say, who add tremendous value, who might be somewhat quiet when you watch them play, but then you're going to look at the baseball reference page at the end of the year and be like, damn, put up a 5-WAR season, like rather quietly. Nico Hoerner's doing that this year. I don't know of anybody who says, oh, Nico Hoerner, superstar, Nico Hoerner, MVP candidate, and yet, right now, 4.6 BWAR in the season, could get to 5 by the end of the year. I mean, that's a really great campaign. That's a franchise cornerstone for you But Jose Altuve. I mean, this is, he's reaching that next level status where Hall of Fame to me is close to like booked. Like he's very close to officially having a resume where you can go, okay, he's there. Now he's just adding to this greatness legacy. I mean, he just had 5 home runs and 6 at-bats in the series against the Rangers. I mean, 3 home runs in 3 innings the other night. Still a pretty solid defensive second baseman. I mean, he has been, they have so many great players, Bregman, Yordan, and everything, but Jose Altuve is the face of that franchise. I mean, he has been for over a decade. He's the one piece that remains from that god-awful era of Astros baseball. I mean, he saw the worst of it, and he's obviously stuck around to be able to see the best of it. So I feel bad because Nico's had a phenomenal year, and Jose Altuve, if there's one detriment, durability just this season, a little lacking, did start the year on the IL, but when he's played, this is, I believe, the highest his OPS has been since he won the MVP in 2017. That makes sense. New rules, no shift. Pure hitters like that are going to be rewarded. So I'm giving the edge to Altuve, but shout out to Nico Hoerner, who's had a fantastic season.
Fantastic campaign. He's great with the glove. He's been great with the shift rules because he's got so much range at second base. He's great chemistry with Swanson, with 35 stolen bases this year. He's going to finish with 30 doubles. He's a phenomenal player to build around. He's been extended. He's part of this core unit for the Cubs. Okay, opposite that is Jose Altuve in a 560 slug in 70 games. Jose Altuve averages season, if he was healthy and played a full season, would have 40 doubles, 35 home runs, 40 stolen bases. We'd be talking about 40 guy or something. He's so utterly talented. And it's like Nico Hoerner is about as good as a second baseman can be to run up against Jose Altuve in some kind of consideration here, but Jose Altuve is generational, so legendary. I'm trying to think now if there's a better second base in my lifetime.
Wow.
I really liked Chase Utley. For so many reasons.
Utley was great, man.
Power from the left side.
Honestly,
Jeff Kent, maybe.
The guy who would have probably been in the discussion and he fucked himself was Robinson Cano. I mean, he was probably as a part of that. He's that's gone to the way, 2 PED suspensions. Oh man, I mean, how many second basemen can you think of stack up with Altuve's resume right now? MVP, 2 World Series, ALCS MVP, million All-Star appearances, multiple batting titles. I think you're right. I think he's the best second baseman of our lifetime. Yeah.
I'm not comparing him to Joe Morgan. If Clemmer was on this show, I'd be getting ripped apart right now.
Right. Clemmer was in his 20s when Joe Morgan was in his prime, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, Altuve, too, has escaped a lot of the scandal in the long run. I think there's just every year it starts to fall away more and more. Jose Altuve it is at second base. I feel like Nico Hoerner would come out on top on almost every single one of these except for Jose Altuve, by the way.
We talked about it last week with the first base situation where it's like not many people are taking anyone over Matt Olson. He just happened to be compared to Freddie Freeman. That's kind of where we're at with the second base situation this week.
Third base, Alex Bregman and Jeimer Candelario. You and I have experience watching Candelario personally as fans of his. And then Alex Bregman is probably in my top 5 favorite baseball players all time. So I'm
really?
He's my favorite position player of this generation.
Wow, okay.
He's a born motherfucker. He is one of the toughest pure baseball guys. He wakes up and eats fastballs for breakfast. All he wants to do is take BP, hit off a cage, look at scouting reports, talk about the game. And to his credit, he moved over to third base because the Astros needed him to because they had Correa. He came in as a shortstop. He should have been developed at the major league level as a shortstop because he's that fucking good. Turned out to be a great defensive third baseman anyways for everything, for all the physical shortcomings of an undersized guy at the hot corner. I really, really like Bregman. Candelario has been a great trade piece, and I do like him in a playoff series, and I like the switch hit. He's having a better season than Bregman, too, offensively. If I'm wrong about that,
offensively, yeah, it's close.
He's a butcher in the field, though.
Yeah. I'm not surprised to see Candelario succeeding this year. The Tigers gutted a ton of players from last year's roster when Scott Harris arrived, and which I was fine with. The one player who I thought, I could see this guy going elsewhere and putting together a really good campaign was JEIMER, just because he led the league in doubles 2 years ago. Everything went sideways for the Tigers last year. And so to see him having the year he had with Washington and now in Chicago, not surprising. I think that, we talk about victims of their own success. I think Bregman's a little bit like that, where he had that year in 2019 where he almost won the MVP. I mean, he gave Trout a really good run, OPS over 1,000 that year. And since then, he's never been able to reclaim or recapture that kind of offensive production. But you look at his numbers, he's got a 4.8 WAR right now on the season. He's played 140 games. That's tied for the most in the entire American League. 820 OPS, which is exactly what he had last year. I mean, 22 home runs, 92 runs driven in. He's been remarkably durable, still a really good a defensive third baseman. I remember early in the season, you came on here and talked about the possibility of him being a Cooperstown candidate. I could definitely see that. I could see him being one of those players. You brought up Chase Utley. I think Chase Utley was a little bit like that, where at their peak, no one ever talked about, top 5 player in the league, Alex Bregman, no doubt. But then you're going to get to the end of his career. You're going to look at that baseball reference page and go, shit, Alex Bregman had a 65 WAR. Wow. Okay. Like he's been durable. He stayed healthy this year. Hit for power. Also, we're talking postseason difference. Really good postseason performer. I mean, he was. I know Pena went outside of Pena. Their most consistent hitter in October a year ago. I'm with you, man. I've always really liked Bregman. He's reached that point bizarrely, even though he's been on really good teams, where I feel like he's become underappreciated.
Underappreciated is a good way to put it. I think he slides under the radar because of how good everyone around him is. I don't know if there's a situation I wouldn't want Alex Bregman playing third base for my team. If I'm Nolan Arenado, I would take over him. Everyone else. I'm thinking very hard about the third baseman in Major League Baseball right now for a comparison. Austin Riley.
I like Riley a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe
good.
Riley. I feel
like Bregman's up there. He's as good as it gets for me. I mean, if it was Bregman versus Arenado,
I put him ahead of Manny. I mean, because at least this year, I mean, Manny's had his inconsistencies offensively, and he's been proven at points to be something of a head case, whereas Bregman's just been consistent as fuck his entire career.
I love Alex Bregman. I hope he's listening to this. He used to make the fucking LSU student managers stick around and keep the lights on so he could take BP on the field at night at LSU to simulate night games in the SEC. He's a psychopath. He told MLB teams out of high school, he's from New Mexico, he was going to LSU from New Mexico. So how good do you have to be to get recruited from New Mexico into Louisiana? He told MLB team, hey, don't take me if you're not taking me in the first round, because I'm not going into professional baseball without being a first rounder. And so when the calls are coming in second and third round, he's like, I wasn't joking. Like, do not draft me. Do not negotiate with me. There's no amount of money you're going to pay me to join your system unless you draft me in the first round. Fucking stud. Another guy. Hey, we get transition from one all-time baseball guy to another. From third base to shortstop, Dansby Swanson versus Jeremy Pena. If I love Alex Bregman, then I am kind of in, Dansby Swanson also has my heart. They play the same songs for me. Dansby Swanson's such a fundamental baseball player, and watching him play shortstop every day is such a treat. His footwork, he's always throwing on target, in balance. There's none of this goofy, overzealous shortstop play. It's just sound, fundamental Tom Amansky baseball. Opposite that, Jeremy Pena, I think everybody wishes their team drafted and developed a guy like Jeremy Pena, because if you can get a league minimum shortstop that can compete as well as Jeremy, you have such an advantage. But I'm still taking, if we had to consider contracts, I'm going to lean Pena. If this was some sort of build the right team and consider cost, because Swanson's a $180 million player, but I think this is a clear Dansby Swanson here. But I know you like Pena.
I do like Pena, but I'm with you. You see, I was the one guy who defended this Dansby signing and even the money they gave him more than most people, because I acknowledged last season he had a career year, made the All-Star team, played in every game. And while I said, okay, I think that this is probably going to be his peak year, because of his defense, I've always viewed him as a guy with a really high floor. Like the numbers he's putting up this year, he's got he's a WAR just over 4, OPS plus of 99. But the thing is, like, I think that will be his numbers year in and year out for the remainder of that contract. I just think he's going to be a durable, not just well above average, sensational defensive shortstop, capable of hitting for power. And I do people can kind of poo-poo this, especially in the age of analytics. And this is not to say Jeremy Pena is a bad leader, because by all accounts, he's got a great head on his shoulders. There are intangibles that a franchise shortstop can bring to a team that go well beyond just the box score, just overall maturity, leadership, showing up every day, not giving a fuck if you're going 0 for 4 or 4 for 4, just trying to win the game. I think the Cubs definitely have that with Dansby Swanson. When you're talking about a Cubs roster that has a lot of guys who are somewhat inexperienced, like Justin Steele's never been, made a deep October run, stuff like that, to have those veteran presences, a guy that has played in and won a World Series and been a key piece of a World Series team, I just love what he adds to that roster. In fact, there was a blog that was posted on MLB.com a few weeks ago that said, in terms of wins above replacement, the Cubs had the best offseason this most recent offseason. When you look at what Bellinger's given them, you look at what Dansby's given them, maybe they aren't players that wow you when you watch them on the field, but in terms of overall value, you can basically book them for a 4+ WAR season every single year, given the edge to Dansby. I would say maybe Pena, because we saw what he did in the postseason last year, you could argue has a higher ceiling, but he chases more than almost any other hitter in baseball. I like Dansby's consistency here.
Dansby Swanson's at his best the second time facing a starting pitcher in a game. He's got like a 980 OPS. Classic baseball guy adjustment gene right there. I like him against good fastballs, and I like him, I hate the term high leverage, just bigger moments. Now, that's some soft, subjective shit I can't really back up, but I just like Dansby Swanson, feel comfortable with him. I got a chance to interview him last year, and he told me something really interesting about how he does all the defensive positioning. So in the age of the shift, he would do all the shifting for the Braves. Think about that. So the dugout might be giving him suggestions before a game, but once the game started, Dansby's the one telling the center field, hey, this way, second base, let's flip-flop. I need you out in right field. In a large part, I don't want to go to the extent of saying he'll call pitches, but he influences the way the game is called. I'll say that.
Wow. Yeah.
How many shortstops can say that? Who knows?
Yeah,
Dansby Swanson, clear. We've got this split here, Cubs-Astros. It's technically 4-3. The Astros get 2 points for the starting pitchers. We have the score. And
I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion, I feel like, with this next one, because I'm still not sure which way I'm leaning.
We're in left field.
Yeah.
We're talking Ian Happ versus Chas McCormick. Now, I don't want to shit on Mauricio DuBon because he was playing second base while Altuve was out, and he's played center field, and then McCormick goes over to left, and then Jake Myers bounces around. So for purposes of this exercise, we've said Chas McCormick's going to play left, and then Jake Myers in center field. If we want to include DuBon in that one too, as a kind of like a platoon, we can. But for left field, let's do Ian Happ versus Chas.
Yeah. I'm literally just thinking out loud here in terms of how I feel about this, because I like Happ. Happ's been a piece. I mean, he's been there for a lot longer than people let on. He's been there for a minute now. I think Chas McCormick is a wildly underrated player. I think he's not only wildly underrated, he's wildly underrated within his own organization. I mean, I follow a lot of Astros fans on Twitter. They get fucking pissed when McCormick is pinch hit for, when he's taken out of a game. We're talking 95 games this season, Carl. He's got 20 home runs. I mean, he had a month of June or July where he was on fire. 898 OPS. And even last year, solid numbers last season when they kind of needed a center fielder. He had an OPS plus of 111. Some big moments in the postseason. Took Garrett Cole deep. Had that incredible catch out in center. This is really tough because I feel like in many ways, even though he is 28 years old, if I go with Chas, I'm kind of going with a somewhat not flash in the pan, but a guy who's not as established as somebody like Ian Happ. But for a guy who's only played 95 games, he's going to end up having a 4-WAR season. I think he fits really well in that lineup. This is tough. I'm giving the edge to McCormick here, but I can be swayed.
Okay, here's where I would sway for Happ.
Okay.
McCormick's great. McCormick had a great postseason. I love a Philly kid. I love that he just continues to get better and that he's a product of the Astros organization. So he's only going to continue to get better. He's going to be put in situations to succeed. They ask him to do way less than what they ask Ian Happ to do. You know, they ask Ian Happ to hit third in the lineup, to be the guy who set the tone, get on base, grind out good at bats, hits from both sides of the plate. He's been an all-star. He's done more, and I'm more comfortable with him. I think defensively they're both great. Ian Happ won a Gold Glove in left field once they got rid of center fielders winning all 3 Gold Gloves, right? That used to be a fucking thing. So Ian Happ's a Gold Glove left fielder. Chas McCormick can be. I like McCormick enough for the debate, but I can't, based on the fact that Ian Happ has had to hit at the top of the lineup, be a guy, carry it. There's the subjective stuff puts me towards Happ. The other thing, too, is the OBP. I think his walk to strikeout rate is, he's got 88 walks, 135 strikeouts. McCormick's got 35 walks and 100 strikeouts in 95 games. That's maybe the one thing where you could say Happ has a little more polish to his approach, and McCormick is more explosive and looking to drive the ball, or looking for more damage, I would say, when he gets in the box, where maybe Happ's a little bit more of a seasoned approach, and I like that.
You know, I'm like I said, I can be swayed. I think what you said, the point you hit on, is he's asked to do more in that lineup. I think there's Jeremy Pena is kind of similar, where if Jeremy Pena was on another team and they batted him lead off or something, I don't think he would be as productive as he is in the heart of that lineup, batting 6, so to speak. I think McCormick finds himself in a perfect situation as, hey, power hitting left fielder, play some center, bat him 7th, hit for power a little bit. Happ, given the fact that he has, you know, a much greater pedigree and is asked to play, you know, a bigger, it's crazy because this is Happ's 7th year. He's 28. It's only McCormick's 3rd year. He's also 28. And I mean, you know, the sample size is much greater for Happ. So yeah, I think I'm probably being a little bit of a victim of the moment by going with McCormick there at, initially. So yeah, but I think you're right. I also am a big fan of durability. 137 games played for Happ this year, 158 a year ago, and 148 the year before that. I really like versatility and durability. So yeah, slight edge there to Happ. I'll concede that one.
I'll say Ian Happ's too one of the cooler guys in baseball. You know, he's just a cool guy. He wants to play golf. He likes that paint. He likes to, you know, he's into music. He hasn't sold his soul to be a Major League Baseball player like a lot of guys in the league. He's just a great athlete. Interesting enough, both left fielders, I believe, hail from the state of Pennsylvania. We got a guy from Philly and a guy from the Pittsburgh area, if I got that correctly. Number 8, center field. I'm going to let you take this one for a test drive. We got Mike Tauchman in center fielder, the pride of Friend High School in Chicago. Burrs, I should say Palatine. Somebody in Chicago just got mad. It's a suburb, guys. Relax. Mike Tauchman in center fielder for the Cubs versus Jake Myers and Mauricio Dubon for the Astros.
Okay, the two of them platooning does make this a bit more of an argument. Dubon has been serviceable, not only serviceable at the early part of that season with Altuve, you know, having the broken hand. You know, he in that first month he hit like 300. Now it was a bizarre 300 because I think he had a 300 batting average with like a 310 on base. I mean, the guy just did not draw any walks. You know, the Astros lineup is so deep, and there's so many guys who can hit for power. But as I brought up earlier, I think that, man, it's tough. My answer is Tauchman, just straight, because I like the bat and I like the pop. I like, you know, OPS right around 100, but I just, having watched the Astros this season, maybe not so much Dubon, but when Jake Myers is up at the plate, I'm just kind of like, all right, here we go. Like, I don't, at least I know when you look at Tauchman's resume, he's been a journeyman guy for a while. We had that one solid year with the Yankees. I think he's been able to capture a little bit of magic this season. It's a very, very close call because I do like what Dubon has given Houston. I think that's a prime example of their factory, that ability to find guys. Again, it's another one where I can be swayed. It's very close. But I just like teams that have like that 8-hitter that can, like, in a playoff series, hit 2 big home runs for you. I think Tauchman has that capability potentially. Small sample size, only played 88 games, but slight advantage here. Yeah.
Jake Myers has a sub 300 on base.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
that stuff needs to get called out. You know, NICO HOERNER has a 390 slug. Like that's really, you know, when you see an on base under 300, he's played as much as he has. Really start to call into questions about what that approach is like when you get in the box and how well you do match up against Major League pitching. I mean, clearly steps behind and adjustments to be made. Now, if there was a trade-off for Meyers, it'd be on the power side where you see guys with low OBPs. Like Jake Berger's a great instance. He's got 30 homers. I think his OBP is under 300. He's not bad. So then is the defense that much better? Is he a guy who can completely change the landscape of a baseball game defensively? And can he do it more than Tauchman? I like what Tauchman brings to the table. And this is actually, the Cubs could be light years ahead of this comparison if they were able to find a first baseman and not use their fourth first baseman in Cody Bellinger this season this year. And first base should not be that hard to solve. But they've had to move Bellinger over, and now Tauchman gets his chance to be the everyday guy. And really, since they made that switch where Tauchman was in center field like full time, and like this is the direction the club's headed, they've been very good. I don't want to line it up exactly and say there's a direct correlation since they put him in there, but it's around that time when the Cubs got hot and started their ascent towards the NL Central championship. But it's a platoon. It's against a platoon. You know, DUBON's good. DUBON can play all over the field. I don't know how much we should be considering that for center field. I'm going to let you pick this one. I don't want to overrule. I just overruled the HAPP. I don't want to come in too hot on this. I would like a platoon if Meyers was just a little bit more advanced offensively. The Tauchman's got it. I mean, like you're saying, if I'd hit both these guys eighth, I'd much rather have Tauchman in the lineup.
I think there's enough defensive versatility on both these teams, or at this point, I'm just looking at what the bat can provide you with, and I like Tauchman's bat more than the other two in Houston.
It's now 5-4 in favor of the Cubs as we go to right field, which we're going to talk about it because this is the purpose of the exercise, but it's Kyle Tucker versus Seiya Suzuki. Seiya's been great last couple of weeks. Very fundamental right fielder. At the same time, Kyle Tucker's a stud. Absolute fucking stud.
Kyle Tucker's an absolute stud. I've always really liked Kyle Tucker. I liked him when he was coming up. I think that he kind of, not had a rough go of things, but he didn't have his first full big league season until 2021 because he had 2 call-ups in 18 and 19. You had the COVID year in 2020. While he did play 58 of the 60 games, like, you know, not exactly a full sample size. Since then, 2021, 30 homers. Last year, 30 homers. This year, 26 homers. OPS has gone up. Really good batted ball data. Also, last year, at least a Gold Glove right fielder. I think that really gets overlooked with him. Mad power, really good swing. He's been very durable. I've always really liked this guy. I think he's got an MVP caliber ceiling. You know, and obviously not this year. It'll be Ohtani's award. But I think that one thing, surprisingly, that caught a lot of Astros fans off guard this year is that their offense, for a good chunk of the summer, did struggle a little bit. Yordan being out, huge reason for that. Altuve having multiple injuries, big reason for that. Tucker carried him for a large stretch of this season. Still a really young player. I mean, he's at 99 home runs, so he's about to get to 100. Only 26 years old. I mean, I think we're looking at a very long career of a guy who's going to accumulate a lot of totals, a lot of home runs, a lot of doubles, and play pretty solid outfield for you as well. So yeah, this is King Tuck. No knock at Suzuki. Suzuki's been really good. Like you said, the last few weeks, months, he's been great. Got that OPS over 800. But to me, we're talking about one of the true, like, future perennial all-stars of this game. I'm going Kyle Tucker.
Since August 1st, Seiya Suzuki is hitting 355, 397 with a 720 slug, 8 homers, 11 doubles, 2 triples. And that's the player that they signed. That's the scouting report player. I mean, maybe not 1,000 fucking OPS. Maybe not that good. But when they signed Seiya, the idea was that he'd be able to get that type of hot. And he's got a 118 OPS plus. You know, I think you want to put your right fielder around the 120 mark, 125 mark and feel good about it. It's right field. It's a premium position for power. Seiya is very good. I think he's only getting better, and I think the adjustment, acclimation to play in Major League Baseball is a lot harder than some people want to give credit for. He's taken a beating this year locally in the media. Recently, people have come off his back. But I made a point about if they trade Bellinger, the Cubs can still compete for the playoffs in the division. You know, that's where they stack up with guys. And I was going through it and saying, Seiya's been so dormant this year. You have to expect at some point there's going to be a 4 or 5 week stretch. That's how good these players are. They're going to run into that stretch. Thankfully, that stretch has happened over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and he's been fucking outstanding. If the playoffs started today, I'd feel very good about our right field. Would I feel better than I do about Kyle Tucker? The answer is no. This is Kyle Tucker's position in right field in the comparison. But Say has been very good the last couple of weeks, and he deserves as much credit as possible. Bouncing back from injury, team needs him. He's delivered. But yeah, I'm not taking him again over Kyle Tucker. That's crazy. That would be crazy. Kyle Tucker doesn't wear batting gloves, does he?
He did, and then he didn't, and then I think he does. I think he still does not again. Yeah, there was a period where he got hot where I think he had him on, but no. I mean, no bad. Yeah, ultimate sign of badass. Like, yeah.
No BGs is the coolest thing you can do on a baseball field, is say no to BGs. While everyone else is putting on eye black and sunglasses and taping shit and shaving their forearms and fucking wearing chains and shit, and then Kyle Tucker just doesn't even wear batting gloves. It's so sweet. DH isn't really much of a comparison. We have the best DH. Yordan Alvarez is the best DH. Yordan Alvarez is fucking awesome.
Again, it stinks because Morel has had some huge moments. It's really good player. I mean, I really, going through this list, the more I really like this core that the Cubs have. I mean, regardless of whether or not they retain Bellinger, I think there's a really good future here, and Chicago really good present. I mean, they're going to make the playoffs. What I think the entire league should be scared as shit of Yordan Alvarez right now, because I watched him in the series he played against Detroit in Comerica, where the Astros won 2 out of 3, and I tweeted out, he just doesn't quite look right yet. And immediately they went to Boston, and he started tearing it up, and then he had a really good series, hit a few home runs, I believe, in this series against Texas. A fully functional, fully operational Death Star that is Yordan Alvarez is the most dangerous hitter in the world to me. I mean, we saw it last year when he had that incredible campaign. The moments he has the ability to crush dreams, like as a hitter in that lineup. We saw him do it multiple. We saw him do it to Seattle in the postseason. We saw him do it to Philly in the postseason. He was ALCS MVP in 2021. Just a scary, very similar to me to a left-handed Aaron Judge, where he's just a big motherfucker. I mean, he just steps to the guy. He just seems like he's just imposing and towering over anybody. Morel's been, had some huge moments, but I think that we're talking about one of the elite power hitters of a generation in Yordan Alvarez. This is an easy pick.
Morel's had great moments. Well said. Electric player, homegrown guy. Wowed a lot of people last year in his first chance of playing regularly. Was kind of kept and stashed in AAA Iowa to start the season, was destroying minor league pitching, and was a player people have been demanding playing time for as the Cubs struggled in April and May, and getting this new core playing together. A lot of fans were clamoring for Morel to come up from Iowa, and I was one of the first guys to say leave his ass down there, because I don't know how long Morel can sustain his explosiveness in the big leagues once he has to go through adjustments. A big swinger, big fucking swinger. And he spends a lot of time in the cages around the field working. Like, if they never closed Wrigley Field, he would never go home. He just would stay there and hit and get ready for games. Type of guy, if they have a 7 o'clock, he's showing up at fucking 10 a.m. He just wants to be at the field, wants to play. Young, youthful energy. There's so many things you love about Christopher Morel. And if we had to take a guy that could play all over the field and bring energy and all that shit, sure, if there was a spot for that, Morel would fucking grade off the charts on it. It's not what we're asking, though. For the designated hitter position, you just can't get better than Yordan Alvarez. There isn't anybody else I'd rather take that position. You're terrified of him. We've talked about this before. He's a scary motherfucker. Like, it's a completely different player. It's a completely different hitter. Morel's been good, and he's earned the spot. If the playoffs started tomorrow, he'd earn that spot as being a bat in that lineup. But it's just not. It's not really a comparison. It's fucking Yordan Alvarez by a mile. Let's see. I believe it's 5-6 now.
Astros
are ahead 5-6 now.
And we're on to bullpens, right? Yeah,
we're on the bullpens here. I don't want to miss some people might say, what about Patrick Wisdom or some of the other players in the roster? For the purpose of the exercise, we're really just doing our best to pick one DH from each club. So I think let's get into bullpens. You watch a lot of Astros games. You're very familiar with their bullpen usage. So how would you grade it out this season and compared to last?
Well, again, much like their starting pitching, their only detriment is simply that they're not as good as they were last year. I really think like last year's Astros pen is one of the greatest ever. Like the way that they, and of course you had Verlander and Frammer and those guys, those games were over after 5 innings if Houston had a lead. My answer here is I'm giving the advantage to Houston's bullpen. You know, there's been some inconsistencies. Rafael Montero has fallen off a cliff. That is a bizarre one because they gave him that extension. Better in the second half, but he's got an ERA well into the 5s. They've made up for it by getting great years from Hector Neris. I mean, Hector Neris has pitched the best baseball of his career in Houston. Brian Abreu was fantastic. I know Ryan Presley drives those fans nuts a little bit because Presley's a weird one. When he blows up, it's a spectacular blow up. It'll be 8 straight outings of scoreless baseball and then a 4-run outing. Like he's just kind of one of those closers that when he has it, he really doesn't have it. And I know we go back and forth mainly with Clemmer about this stuff. I do believe in postseason pedigree. I do think that stuff matters. I think having experience in October, having a lockdown closer in October really makes a difference. Ryan Presley's last 2 postseasons, obviously the Astros lost the World Series in 21, won it all in 2022. We're talking 19 appearances, 20 and 2/3 innings, 1 earned run, 5 walks, 27 Ks. That's an ERA of 0.44. The Astros has not blown a save. The Astros are 16-3 in games that he appears in the postseason over the last 2 campaigns. I mean, he's just been absolutely, I know, right? He's been dynamite and arguably not even their best reliever. I mean, you look at what Abreu did and what Neris has done. I think they've taken a minor step back, as has some of the starting pitching. But I think the experience is there. We'll get to managers in a second. Dusty does have a rather archaic way of managing his bullpen, but when you have these fucking 4 studs going back to back to back, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just give the ball to Abreu in the 8th. Give the ball to Presley in the 9th. So I like their depth. I like the experience. I think you got to go Houston here with the bullpen.
The Cubs have had a good bullpen this season, and they've been able to put together a solid pen. Alzolay's got 22 saves, 61 innings, 65 strikeouts. He's a homegrown guy. They wanted to develop him as a starting pitcher, some shoulder issues, and then he transitioned into a closer role. About a year and a half ago is, your future can be in the bullpen. And I like him. He's fiery and competitive. Mark Leiter has been very good. 62 appearances on the season, 58 innings. 75 strikeouts, doesn't walk a ton of guys. He's usually the guy they throw out there when it's, runners on first and second, 1 out, or you got to clean up and inherit some shit. And they do have good depth. I think the Cubs have great depth across their pitching staff, where you don't have a couple guys that are very good and you don't want to see this reliever. For the most part, they kind of fall in line with the same level of confidence, but they don't have shutdown, fuck you stuff out of that bullpen where someone's coming in and it's good luck. You just have quality, solid grinder, like guys that wear their heart on their sleeve are coming out of the bullpen for the Cubs. And I like that a lot, but you cannot overlook the success and the history and the experience that the Astros have in that bullpen. Like a lot of guys for the Cubs are getting their opportunity. A lot of guys for the Astros have had their opportunity and done a good job with it when it's come. So it's one of those situations like I can't take the Cubs over the Astros here, but I wouldn't feel overwhelmed in a matchup against them about the bullpen.
Right.
I think we kind of scratched a little bit of that sentiment with the starting pitching here. But yeah, the Astros have better starting pitcher on paper. They've got better stuff, but I do like what the Cubs are fucking running out there. I'm not saying we suck or we're a little bitch or anything. I just have to give the pen nod here to the Astros. Now, this goes in conjunction because we do the end of these. It's 5-7 in favor of the Astros now. And the last thing we consider is the manager. I'm a big David Ross guy, but Dusty Baker's done it. I have love for both of these guys, more for David Ross. Dusty's done it. He's won a World Series. But what David Ross is doing with the Cubs, people criticize his bullpen management. I don't think people understand how much he brings to the table from like a collective love, spirit, energy, vibe. We're here. I know how to do it. Day games. This is what it means to be a Cub. I think he maxes out in that category as manager. He just still needs a little bit more experience. I want to see him get into the postseason a couple times. I think he could really flourish into a Hall of Fame style manager down the road. He just needs to get the playoff experience. Right now, it's hard to go against Dusty, especially Dusty went in there when nobody wanted that fucking job. Nobody wanted to touch the Astros. Shit. I really like Dusty.
I do too. And it's bizarre to me how like he has won everywhere. Every team he's ever managed, he's won. You know, Giants to the World Series when they couldn't make it to the World Series. Cubs to the ALCS, got the fucking Reds to the playoffs, Nats to the playoffs, Astros to the playoffs. Everywhere he's gone, he's been successful. And yet there's still like a large percentage of people are like, Dusty in October. Like I feel like we amplify his mistakes more than any other manager, despite the fact that he just keeps winning. And the point you brought up about Ross, and I think these managers in many ways are kind of comparable, is that we get so, and I do as well, get so caught up in bullpen management, analytics, lineup construction. You know, there is a psychological element to this game. Do you play for your manager? Do you have a relationship with your manager? You know, and I remember having this argument about Jim Leland back in the day when he was near the end of his time with Detroit. It's like, yeah, man, I have some, I wish he didn't bat Ryan Rayburn second, but I also know that his players will run through walls for this guy. And it's like that with Dusty. And the guys have been open about it. He's been a bait, I'm willing to venture there might not be a person in the world who has more awesome baseball stories than Dusty Baker. Like, this guy has been around generations of baseball players in the past. Now, just that is not necessarily equate to being a great manager, but the experience is there. God, he was a manager for a World Series winning team last year. Like, you can point out whatever flaws you want. Much of that core is still intact, including him at the forefront. It's one of those things where even his mistakes, you kind of just shrug your shoulders and say, oh, shucks, that's who he is. He has an identity as a manager. Not to say that Ross doesn't, but much like when I talked about with the bullpen, I'm going to give the edge to a guy who has a plethora of postseason experience versus a guy whose most recent postseason experience, it was the COVID year, the 2 years in the COVID year. Besides that, huge crowds, actual, wild card round, NLDS environments. He hasn't experienced that yet. So you got to give the edge to Dusty.
I think the top tier of managing in baseball is Craig Counsell, Bruce Bochy, Tito stepping out at the end of this year. Dusty is the last name in the first tier. He's in this. There's no way you can say you'd rather have multiple managers more than Dusty Baker. He's, to your point, won everywhere. They won the Central Championship with the Reds. The Reds
twice.
Reds' only good moments are with Dusty Baker in that dugout of this millennium. And then the Nationals too. Like, he didn't have a shitty bowl. It's not like he's not the one blowing fucking games and saves in the playoffs. Like, he just had some horrible, horrible pitching staffs. Great starters, but horrible staffs there. Yeah, it's hard, especially when it comes down to manager, too. I think for these comparisons, you just have to consider the entire body and the volume. Like, I like where David Ross's future is going. Over the next 10 years, I mean, obviously, Dusty's going to be out of baseball in 10 years. But, I like where Ross is going. But right now, we got to go give a speech about a 7-game series. We got to go win. We got to sit that lineup card. We got to talk to guys after they fail. Like, Dusty Baker's that guy. Dusty Baker's that guy over David Ross right now. And I fucking love David Ross. I'd rather play for David Ross. I'd rather be on his staff. I'd rather commit myself to where David Ross is going as a manager. But right now, shit. I hope Cubs fans aren't mad at me for this.
I don't think so. I mean, it's the pedigree speaks for itself. I mean, it's hard to stack up to the resume that Dusty has.
So let's go through this one more time, just for shits and giggles. We'll clear this up here. We got the, things are going crazy with the Yak outside here, so go subscribe to the Yak too if you haven't heard of that show. It's a radio show on Barstool. And obviously subscribe on YouTube to Barstool Baseball. We're just running through this list one more time to score out our official grades for Raw Star Wars, Astros vs. Cubs. Starting pitching, Astros. Catcher, Cubs. First base, Cubs. Second base, Astros. Third base, Astros. Shortstop, Cubs. Left field, Cubs. Center field, Cubs. And then just a clear runaway for the Astros. Right field, Astros. DH, Astros. Bullpen, Astros. Manager, Astros. If they played 7 games, I can see it going 7.
I would say the fact that it is this close right now is a testament to how much the Cubs roster and player development has done them favors. I mean, I think that coming into the year, the Cubs were one of those trendy, like, hey, they didn't make the playoffs last year, but they could this year teams. I think that they have taken there's been so much progress there. Now, of course, the Bellinger resurgence is a huge part of this, but look, dude, if you get credit for your players' successes the same way that you deserve criticism for your players' failures. Like, yeah, I don't think anyone in the Cubs organization predicted that Justin Steele would be a Cy Young frontrunner in late or mid-September. Guess what? He is. Like, sorry. So I think that the fact that it's this close shows the strides that they've taken. We talked about starting pitching, but in the first half of this season, Marcus Stroman carried that rotation. He's missed a lot of time, and even when he hasn't missed time, he was pretty ineffective for a while there. And the team as a whole has not missed a beat. I mean, they're a game and a half back of Milwaukee right now, and it's not anything that, it's not a detriment to the Astros. They're still a wonderful team right now. They're in sole possession of first place again, top the AL West. But, and of course they won this particular matchup. But I do think the fact that it's this close, the Cubs are going places. I mean, I would be interested to do this again a year from now, after free agency, after another deadline, and see where these two teams stack up.
Well said. It's amazing the stretch the Astros have kind of taken from, we did this after the World Series. The tone has changed drastically. And I would like to do the Cubs again, maybe in the playoffs, matchups of Phillies. There's probably a way we can do this segment quicker for multiple teams when playoff matchups roll around. As we've talked repeatedly in the power rankings, as we get in the Wednesday shows, as the season's coming to a close, there's a couple of really big narratives for fans to wrap your heads around. Hey, the Braves are one of the best teams we've ever seen, period, ever, end of story. Another big narrative, the race for the AL wild card in the AL West and that interplay is unbelievable. The fact that the Orioles and the Rays are the two teams competing for the AL East championship, how different they do it amidst the biggest spenders and some of the most talent in the sport. Amazing, amazing stuff. What I like about the roster wars exercise is we get to go in and really get deep on these teams. So when the playoffs start, like I'm way more familiar with these narratives than I would be otherwise, and how these teams fit into shit. So I do want to come back and maybe do the Rays. I like the Rays on paper. I don't know how much people give a fuck for us to go through that exercise. I do like, starting to cross over, whether it's Mariners versus Phillies, Dodgers versus Astros, shit like that. Stuff to consider. But I do like doing this very much with you. I like going through this roster.
Yeah. It's been great.
Big weekend for baseball. The Brewers are in Yankee Stadium. We've got the Diamondbacks at Wrigley Field. Baltimore's at Boston. And Seattle is in Tampa. It's a major playoff implication series this weekend. This is Barstool Baseball. We're going to be back on Monday with a power ranking show where we're going to go through the top 9 teams in baseball. That's my favorite thing we do.
Same here. Yeah, it's always fun. Fun with the panel, the guys, especially this time of year where so many teams are so close together. I think it opens the door for a lot of interesting debate. So yeah, it's great.
Subscribe wherever you guys find the show. Until next time, we'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much for tuning in. I mean that. Thank you.